we're doing at the moment is launching the first two books, Attacking the Library by George Arion and Kill the General by Bogdan Ryb. And later on, we'll be launching a book by Stoica-Mujea, and a book by myself and Stedgerel Oloru. Stedgerel Oloru is a noted historian of intelligence, and we've been working on a book about a serial killer called Romero. One of the reasons we were doing this was that we believed crime fiction was as expressive, demanded as much craft and thoughtfulness as any other form of literature. This is what we believe, and it's one of the reasons why we have begun to work on these books and to work with these writers. First, we had to identify and select writers that we wanted to work with. Then we had to persuade them, against their better judgment, to come with us. And then we had to translate the books. It's traditional to try and produce versions of foreign language texts which appear as if they were written in the native tongue, as if they were written by an English person. And you read it, and you miss all the sort of cultural references, you miss the significance of the feeling with which people use words. And one of the things we found about these books in particular, and we were probably influenced by the fact that we started with George Arion's Attacking the Library, one of the things that we found was that the way they used words was also to do with a sense of cultural and literary challenge that they were bringing to their work. And we wanted that to be clear. We wanted in the translation to allow the writer to say that rather than simply tell a story in in a sort of seamless way. So one of the things that we did, and one of the reasons it took us so long, that we tended to produce 3 or 4 different versions. One, a literal translation. Next, a translation that's filtered through my perception of the shape and the style and so on. Then a translation which emerged from often passionate arguments between myself and my co-translators. And I hope that when you buy the book and you read it, you'll be pleased with the result. And I want to make the point that we sort of went into this partly because we wanted to get over something about Romanian culture and Romanian identity in circumstances where it's difficult to do so in this country, and even in the United States. We wanted to get away from the sort of discussion of Romanians as criminals, or whether they're good migrants or bad migrants or whatever, and give a sense of the culture. We wanted books that people would take and read in the tube, or read when they were bored, or read in the airplane, and at the same time get a sense of the quality of thought, the adventurousness of these writers, and the sense in which they set out, like, I have to say, I was, as many of you know, I was a curator. I worked at the Tate Galleries, and I was very familiar in Europe with people who were adventurous about the culture, who were setting out to change the way that people did things in their particular form. And I recognize these about these writers, which I like very much. I would never have persevered with it. I would never have started it if I didn't think the books were very worthwhile. And if I didn't think publishing them here was important, then I would.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm fascinated and happy to be here at the launch of this new business, and that I have the writers here with us. George Arion, which I studied his books. And then we have Wana, next to George. And finally, our third Romanian author present here, Bogdan Hrib, the one who was our partner for dialogue when we started this business.
Cadavrul se află în dreapta mea, așezat pe un malder de cărți. Altădată m-aș fi repezit globiu ca un pițigoi să le pun în rafturi. Acum mă uit năuc la omul care zace într-o baltă de sânge. Îl cheamă Valentin, dar ce caută în casa mea și de ce are o asemenea rană la cap, nu pot să vă spun nici să mă ardeți cu fierul roșu. Întreagă-ți fie zis, când mi se pomenea de un astfel de supliciu, bunicul meu nu spunea decât atât. Brr, odios. Am încheiat citatul.
The corpse is to the right of me, lying on a pile of books. At any other time, I would have hurried to rearrange the books on their shelves. Now all I can do is stare, dazed, at the man lying there in a pool of blood. His name is Valentin, but what he's doing in my house, and why he has a wound like this in his head, I couldn't tell, not even if I was being tortured, which, to digress, reminds me of my grandfather, who, whenever people mentioned torture, only replied, "Eh, revolting," end quote.
Usually when we have a book launch, and usually I'm not in front of a microphone as a writer, but as a publisher. So I think I had these last 18 years as a publisher, at least 500 book launches. But this is the first one on the 31st floor, and first one in London. And thank you for the team, for the Profusion team.
From the